welcome to episode 329 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian, having just finished my 18th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is the perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can find me on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at @LMS_United. On Threads and Instagram, you can find me at School Librarians United, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Friends, it is now my pleasure to introduce our sponsor to the podcast, Junior Library Guild. What if I told you that there's a collection development service that can save you time and increase title circulation rates? Junior Library Guild does that and more. With their team of experienced media library specialists and publishing industry professionals, every title they recommend is vetted for my readers and organized into categories based on reading level and interest. Ultimately, Junior Library Guild helps my students foster a love of reading. Use code UNITED15 to receive 15 free books in your first shipment. And now for today's episode, Make a Difference in the World, and my conversation with Amanda Struckmeyer. Amanda Struckmeyer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Amy.
You know, friends, I am so grateful to ALA Editions whenever they come out with a new book which features a school librarian sharing their expertise. I am always on board and featuring them on a show. So this is one of those episodes because we have a published author with us and they happen to be a school librarian. Amanda, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us about the library where you currently work and some of the programs that you offer.
Absolutely. So I'm a school library media specialist at an elementary school just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. We serve grades kindergarten through 4th, and we've got a population of about 350 kids. We work on a fixed schedule in our building, which works great for us. We're able to see every student at least once a week. We're located centrally in the school, so we really are kind of the hub of the learning community.
Fantastic. So, in addition to being published as an author already now, this is your second book, you are also pursuing your doctorate in educational sustainability. I need to know, what is educational sustainability?
Great question. So the way I like to explain it is educational sustainability harnesses the power of education in all its forms, whether that's the written word or a professional development course or classroom learning or even billboards, social media, you name it. Harnessing the power of those tools to promote sustainability. And when we're talking about sustainability, oftentimes we think about the environment, but really sustainability is broader than that and encompasses all kinds of topics, including education and equality.
So I'm really curious because while I will never get a PhD in anything, there will be no doctorate, programs for me. But I'm wondering, how has educational sustainability been impacted by the changes in what we perceive as education now that we've gone through a global pandemic? And it has sort of opened up a lot of other opportunities for us to educate and support one another remotely.
Great question. First of all, don't sell yourself short. You may be a doctor someday. I think, coming out of the pandemic, we learned to see things in a completely different light, and we learned to look for opportunities where we may not have looked for them before. So providing access to materials and online resources and services without the contact we once relied on, maybe looking at providing those services and resources in unconventional ways. And that allows us, in a sustainable way, to be able to reach people we may not have reached before.
I think that makes sense. But if I understand also, sustainability would have to then also factor the things that hinder one's ability to access. So you're trying to reduce some of those barriers to access. Not to toot my own horn, but podcasting has always been free and customizable and convenient, especially to those of us with zero budget for our PD. So once longtime listeners know, yes is always the answer. If you want to use the podcast for your PD, talk to your administrator. Yes is always the answer. So it's a great way to target your learning because it is customizable and you access those playlists that we have in the show notes. But again, reducing those barriers, because a lot of times money is what really stands in the way. Money, and then obviously our schedules and our obligations to others. So no, I think that's really cool. So may I ask, where are you in that journey? So can you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Are you in the midst of research? What's going on?
Absolutely. So I just finished my coursework. So now I have entered ABD territory, all but dissertation. I'm hoping to finish next year, and I'll turn 50 the following year. So I'm trying to go for doctorate by 50, which is just a number, but it's a good goal to, keep myself on track. Yeah, so kind of transitioning now from the classes to the dissertation and the research. My program does an innovative thing in the summers. There's a required 1-week residency, and alternating years, which included this year, students have the choice between going to Stevens Point, Wisconsin for a week of very valuable learning with faculty and campus resources. We meet with the campus librarian. We learn all about everything dissertation-y and doctorate-y. But this year, we also have the option of doing a week in Costa Rica. So exploring Costa Rica, the sustainable initiatives there, especially in the tourism setting. So I got to go to Costa Rica this year as part of my doctoral program. And this program is so amazing. It just keeps people engaged. And I feel like it's really of the moment kind of a thing.
So, Amanda, can I ask, because listeners are going to want to know, would you also include in the show notes, we're going to include, friends, a link to Amanda's book. She's actually written 2, so you've co-authored the first one. We'll get links in the show notes. But could you also put a link in the show notes to your program that you are currently in? Because there are a lot of school librarians who are looking for that next challenge, that next thing that's on their radar that gives them focus. And it sounds like you're having a great deal of success.
Absolutely. I think this is the perfect program. I mean, this is not, my goal here is not to promote this program, but it's designed for people who are working full time. And I looked at a few PhD programs in library science, and most of them required you to be a full-time student, which just isn't feasible for a lot of us. And we have students in our program from all over the country and actually all over the world. We have several international students in our cohort, and it's very flexible. When I started the program, I thought it would mainly be teachers because it has the word educational in the title. But we have public health people, we have a winery businessman, we have somebody who's in shoe design. So we've got all kinds of people. It's very interesting. And I would encourage anybody who's interested to go for it.
Fantastic. All right. I really appreciate it. Again, when I talk to folks for whom that is something they're looking for, I love being able to provide the resources. And it sounds like you're really having a great time doing that. So let's go ahead. You also, in addition to being a school librarian, you have previous work experience in public libraries. And I think that's relevant to our conversation today because your book does provide a resource for anybody who is supporting school-age children and their families. And so that also includes our public libraries and the people who staff them. So would you give us an idea of your previous experience at the public library and what kind of lens did that give you when you were writing your book?
Absolutely. So for 8 years, I was the head of youth services at a public library just outside of Madison. And one thing I recognize as a school librarian and as a public librarian is that we're often asked to do more with less. So I wanted to create a tool that would help librarians do more with less. And I also recognize that everyone's setting is different. The number of patrons you're serving, the age, the socioeconomic situation, the time slot you've got. So I wanted to create something that was flexible, that could easily be tailored to fit any setting, any set of circumstances for a public or school librarian. And we also all have different priorities, and those are oftentimes dictated by administration or board of directors. And so we need to be flexible and be ready to bend our programming and tailor it to those demands as well, or those guidelines.
When I was reading this, it was very much like I could customize what I do across K-12. And even younger, forgive me. I mean, given that, if you're dealing with our littles, there's a good possibility in the public library setting that you would actually have families there. So you have the family component in there. But there was a lot of customization here where you could sort of pick and choose that if I'm looking at one particular chapter, I might glean something from this chapter that I might, cross over and use with something else I learned in a different chapter. So I love that. There's something so universally applicable when your book is centered on the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals and not specifically on like state goals or areas of our curriculum, which I think is sometimes sort of limiting when folks are teaching to the state standards. Teaching, and I no disrespect. I mean, I appreciate that as professionals, we are obligated to support the initiatives of our building, of our district, and that's really important. But if we have that flexibility, the wonderful thing is that if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, it is really easy to see how this would work in many different settings.
Absolutely. I always think of people in our roles as school librarians as being so resourceful and also having that flexibility, which is really unique in a school. So we can look for opportunities to partner with teachers in all subject areas. And that's where this content really comes in handy, because you may be looking for something as simple as an interactive bulletin board or a quick make and take activity. And while you could just look something up on Pinterest, this is going to give you something that's a little bit richer and a little more intentional that is tied to those SDGs.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned things like Pinterest, because I know it's a very common solution when we're looking to expand or build on a program that perhaps might be new to us, but we know somebody out there has done this before. Why are we going to reinvent anything? But for me, I put a great deal of faith in the work that other school librarians do. So knowing that a school librarian created this resource, for me, all of a sudden, I sort of let my defenses down just a little bit. And I'm far more open to a lot of your suggestions because I know you're already working in a school library like I am. And you sort of been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and you know what it's like to do my job in some sense. Let's go ahead. Upon closer inspection, the book is really supporting students of all grade levels. I realize your title says Inspiring Teens and Tweens and Families. That's the kicker, right? And families to make a difference in the world. Again, what an admirable goal to sort of drive the programming, whether you're at a school library or you're in a public space. But I noticed that when you say family programming, that is where you can take this all the way down to our littles, our pre-K, because that kind of programming, if you are in a public library, you would have your families. If you're in a school library, you'll be dealing with your kinders and your pre-K. So you really do have something in this book for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important to offer that family programming. And these are activities that I might set up during a conference night or an open house when we've got families coming through, we've got the younger siblings, we've got the older siblings, or in the public library setting when the whole family's coming to a program. The family program suggestions are also going to come in handy for librarians in public or school settings who are looking to build in accommodations to the activities and the programs. Because we are here, and this is part of that breaking down boundaries and overcoming obstacles. that you talked about right in the beginning of the program. We're here for everybody, and we want to make this content accessible to everyone. Yeah, all ages, all stages, all interest levels. We've got something for everyone.
I love it. I love it. This is a very intuitive book in terms of how you structure each chapter. There are 17 chapters because there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Originally, I was going to title this episode SDGs, and I was like, no, it's Making a Difference, because make a difference in the world is an amazing way to drive the programming, whether it's in our libraries, it's in our schools. But I love this because when you're looking at something like the Sustainable Development Goals, how can you question that, right? How can anybody point a finger at what you're doing in your space and going, wait, why'd you do that? I appreciate also that trying to incorporate all 17 into a year might be a bit ambitious.
Absolutely. And so I would expect, there may be some people out there who want to work through this book cover to cover. But I expect that more people will kind of browse through and pick and choose the ones that work for their setting and their goals. And maybe you focus on one specific sustainable development goal, or maybe you're kind of going for a broader brush. Either way, you're doing something good. You're making a positive impact, and there's no expectation to do every item in the book. They're set up so that they all work independently. This is a chance, too, for school librarians in particular to tie in with some of maybe the science themes in their schools, because something like life underwater or life on land, you're going to have all kinds of animal and plant opportunities to connect with through that content. So you could partner up with a classroom teacher on that.
Okay, so friends, I know I have a Post-it note myself on the Chapter 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, because as somebody who has lived in Michigan for a long time, the Flint water crisis is something that still is part of the fabric of our lives, and many people for whom that trust in clean water has really been shaken, especially if you live here in Michigan. So, no, I love this. I totally understand. Would you give us a breakdown, because you structured each chapter in such a way that allows us to pick and choose, to customize and implement things in our own space. So for people who don't have the benefit of the copy of the book right in front of them, like I do, thank you, ALA Editions, would you go ahead and give listeners an appreciation for the thought that went into structuring each chapter so that it was easily accessible?
Absolutely. So each chapter includes a basic introduction, just a couple paragraphs. Here's what this sustainable development goal is. Here's what it's about. Here's where we're going with it in this chapter. And then we've got family programs. And for each chapter, we've got 4 different family programs. And I tried to be as diverse as possible with those programs in terms of intensity of materials needed and the time that you would need, or the staff time, so that this would be accessible to everybody. So we've got the 4 family programs followed by 4 tween programs. So this, we're kind of looking at those upper elementary, maybe getting into middle school, the in-betweeners. And then we've got 4 teen programs. So looking at those older kids who have a little bit more independence, their skills are more developed, their interests are maybe more specific. And then we also have passive programs listed for each chapter. And the passive programs are something that you can set up in your library, whether you're in a school or a public library. These are available all the time. So this is a great way, again, of breaking down some barriers. If we have scheduled programs, we're really only accommodating a certain number of people who have the flexibility and the availability to make it during that specific time. But if we're offering programming, passive programming, this is something that's available anytime, and patrons can just help themselves. There's something engaging there for them to do, to participate in, and oftentimes it's part of a larger community project. So they're getting a lot of those benefits, and it's on their time schedule.
Friends, we've done 2 episodes entirely dedicated to passive programming just because when we realize so much of our ability to control what students get when they come into our space, passive programming is one of those things where we can create a station that's set up year round and we can rotate what's there. And I like the passive programs because as somebody who is oftentimes reacting to what my students' schedule is like, what my teachers' demands are like, if I can put something out and say, hey, listen, this month, this is what we're going to feature this month, this is what we're going to feature next month. For those of you who are creating programming that has a theme, here's your theme, the SDGs, and I love this because the passive programs are a way for us to build out our program that doesn't necessarily connect directly with our instructional time in front of students. And for those of us who struggle to collaborate with teachers, oftentimes this passive programming is oftentimes the kind of way that we can work with our students in a way that works with the demands of their very busy schedules.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I always think of it as a way to kind of sneak in a little bit extra. So, for example, if you have some interactive trivia questions or something, and then maybe you include a few print resources on the table or a QR code to your database page or something. So your students are engaging in this fun activity, maybe not even realizing that they're accidentally learning how to use some of the research skills you've taught them.
Absolutely. And I can't discount this last piece, which is really vital. And that is because we've recently been doing episodes that feature utilizing our community resources in our space. How do we bring those community connections into our space and build out our program while connecting with the larger community that surrounds us? Would you give us a little idea about how and why community connections are vitally important when you're doing this in the context of sustainable development goals?
Absolutely. So sustainability is not something we do just individually for ourselves in a silo. Sustainability, one of the main tenets of sustainability is that we're all connected. Everything is connected. We all rely on one another and we all support one another. So each chapter also includes ideas for community connections. So these might be guest speakers, local experts, people you can reach out to come in and complement and supplement what you're doing. And today, we are so lucky to be connected with people through online. We have that online access to people around the world at the touch of a button. So the community connections section in each chapter kind of encourages librarians to reach out and look beyond just what you have and really harness some of the potential of people that might be at your disposal.
Absolutely, because there's something awfully freeing when you can zoom in your expert. When you can zoom in your expert, because obviously as wonderful as it is to bring your expert into your space, there oftentimes are logistics issues with that. And I'll be honest, not every building is really keen on bringing in random strangers to talk to their students. And sometimes the hurdles that we need to go through to get them a background check. I know in my building, we've got to get a background check on randos who want to come into our building. Mm-hmm. That includes our daughter is a burn reconstruction nurse in a ICU. And in order for me to get her to come in to speak to my med skills classes at my high school, which she has now done for 2 years, which is fun. It's a lot of fun. But I do have to get her cleared through our safety protocols in my building. Does not matter that I am a staff member for the past 4 years. My kid has to pass the clearance in order to come into the building to speak. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, but she's my kid. I thought that was, nope, we've got to get her cleared. I was like, okay, fine. It's worth it. Let's do this.
Absolutely. So by connecting virtually, you're helping yourself by lifting some of those barriers, and you're also providing greater access because you may be able to connect several classrooms simultaneously, or you may be able to record something and deliver it multiple times.
That is fantastic. I know we did that a couple episodes ago. We were talking about a Holocaust survivor who zoomed in, and the entire grade level was able to participate in this Zoom experience because it was a Zoom experience. And if this person had come in person, that would have provided some limitations. That would have been a little bit difficult for a couple of reasons.
Absolutely. See, there we are again, making more with less.
There we go. And here's something that's interesting, because it's not often that I get to talk to somebody who has also been a public librarian, but it's very easy for me as a school librarian to assume that the public library does not have the same challenges I do when it comes to having a budget, when it comes to having adequate support in the programming that I want to do in my space. But I'm sensing from you and the 8 years that you spent in the public arena that there are impediments when it comes to wanting to implement programming in your space as a public librarian.
Absolutely. Yes. And it totally depends on the library you land in. Sometimes you have great financial resources. Sometimes it's more limited. Sometimes you have a lot of staff that can work on things, and sometimes that's more limited. And sometimes your administration may have specific expectations that may or may not be clearly communicated that you then need to build your programming to suit. And I have heard of many libraries that kind of measure their success by the number of patrons that attend a program. And building a program that's going to attract many people versus building a really high quality program can oftentimes be two different things. So even though the challenges that public librarians face are different from school librarians, they're very real and they're definitely valid.
Sure. Love when librarians put together book lists. I absolutely love it. And for me, it really does help simplify my job considerably because, again, I trust librarians implicitly when it comes to putting together resources. And in this case, let's talk about those book recommendations you made across all grade levels. And these are to promote the Sustainable Development Goals. They're popular titles, meaning it's possible, there's a very good chance that many of the titles you listed would probably, in some cases, already currently be in our collections. So I really thought that was interesting. But tell us a little bit about your thought process when you put together the book recommendations to pair with your programming.
Yeah, so our hope was that these are books that are already on your shelf or on your radar, and we wanted books that are very appealing and engaging. Certainly there are many titles out there that would fit this topic, but I really tried to pare down to the most current, the most celebrated, the most palatable for children, particularly knowing that we're often in a position where we need to blend the book we're using with some other kind of classroom content. So looking for books that could easily be tied to not only the Sustainable Development Goals, but also additional content if need be.
Something that, and this is before I became a high school librarian, I was an elementary librarian for 14 years. And something that impressed me about picture books in particular was how picture books could tackle in many ways some of the most difficult, the most sort of soul-crushing situations around the world, and do so in a way that is, and I hate to use the word age-appropriate, but in this case I will, in a way that is consumable by our littles, and tackling some really, really difficult topics, and oftentimes across your SDGs here, but done so in a way which is very skillfully done for our very youngest learners. But I got to tell you, right now, I'm looking at those lists, and if I didn't have those books, I'd be purchasing those books. So I'm looking at the programming that you offer, the book lists that you offer, and saying, you know what, I may not teach this in my program, but I'm going to make sure these books are in my collection.
Absolutely. And I always think about sharing picture books, too. You know, we're in such a unique situation where I often think when I'm sharing a picture book with an older audience, too, this may be the only time in their day or their week when someone reads them a picture book. And older students oftentimes have so much more context to lend to the listening experience that they can access the book in a way that the littles maybe don't. And even though the littles are getting quality out of that listening experience, and I talk about this with students a lot, is, we could read this book when you're in kindergarten, but now you're in 4th grade and we're going to read it. And I wonder how your experience of this book is different now that you're 9 instead of when you were, compared to when you were 5. So it's an interesting exercise, and I always encourage other librarians to take advantage of those rich resources, the picture books. And the books that I've listed in this manual are, it's a variety of picture books and nonfiction and fiction and graphic novels. But I never want people to forget about the power of picture books for all ages.
Something that, and if anybody's tuning in and would like to do this episode, it's out there because we haven't recorded it, but it's the role that picture books serve in upper grade levels. So the importance of picture books in a middle school collection, the importance of picture books in a high school collection. So friends, if there's somebody out there who wants to do this episode, reach out to me on the show. I would love to talk with you, because I will be honest, there have been times in the high school that I run right now, I've now done this for 4 years, where I would have loved to have been able to go and pull books from the picture book collection that I have, and I don't have it. So I completely agree with you. It's likely that there are school librarians tuning in who would have an opportunity to incorporate some or a few of these programs into our current sort of curriculum that we offer to our building, or our programming that we offer to our building, but we're not going to be able to do all 17. What is your recommendation to library professionals who are looking at your book and have to be really selective?
Absolutely. And there's no expectation that anyone would need to do everything in the book. I would say start by flipping through and getting familiar with the format, and think about your audience, the bulk of the students you serve, and what age group they're going to fall into, and also what you would want this content to look like. Are you looking for more of a passive program? Are you looking for more of a here and there Zoom with an expert? Are you looking for, an interactive game? And is there other content that you need to roll into this? Is there information literacy content you need to roll in, or other content you need to fold in? And I think that's going to really guide you in selecting the activities that are going to work well for your community.
Well, and I will say, as somebody from a high school perspective, I could see a lot of these tying in with the clubs that we have in our school and some of the courses which our teachers offer. So a good example would be the Good Health and Well-Being. Well, we've got health classes. We also have our You Matter Week, which we do in conjunction with our social worker and our counselors. The You Matter Week is really, really fun. They could benefit from this. When we're talking about gender equality, which is one also included in here in Chapter 5, gender equality, we have a diversity club, which is very active and does all sorts of things. I know I saw the diversity club connection here with March is Women's History Month, and thinking the gender equality would tie in nicely with our Women's History Month celebrations that we do. I've already mentioned the clean water, which we could do. Well, we have an environmental science program in our high school, and that would be fantastic, including that with our environmental science program. So, no, I see there being a lot of curricular tie-ins as well. You've got climate action. Think about how many of our science classes could use that in their programming. So no, I absolutely love this. Amanda, I'm so grateful you took time out of your busy summer to talk about your book. It really is helpful when somebody takes programming, things that they've been doing professionally, whether it's in the public arena or in our schools, but puts it together in such a resource that's as accessible as your book is.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really hoping that people look at this book and share this book, because I oftentimes think that people maybe don't realize that the work they're doing does lend itself to sustainability. For example, a health teacher may not recognize that good health and well-being is a huge part of sustainability. And the same thing with economics. So I think there's a relief and a celebration that comes when you acknowledge to people who work in those areas that they really are promoting sustainability, and it kind of puts you on an equal playing field. There's a commonality because now you're all working toward a common goal. I'm just really hoping that people embrace this book and that they reach out if anyone has a question.
Well, and I think that teachers tend to tense up. Our reflex when our administrators sit down with us at the beginning of the school year, and we interpret a great deal of what they are saying as one more thing I have to do. This is one more thing I have to do. Add it to the things that I already do. And I sense it as a burden. Mm-hmm. Rather than looking at what we already do and see how many of these sort of mesh with the things that we presently do to support our schools and our students and our teachers across the curriculum.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think this is going to be really validating for a lot of our librarians in school and public arenas.
And there's a certain amount of, patting myself on the back when I sit there and go, I'm making a difference in the world when I teach blank, and then you sort of, and sort of your book sort of says it's make a difference in the world. Like, I am making a difference. Obviously, I'm educating the next generation of young people who are going to become, voting members and contributing members of our society, but creating opportunities for them to think of the larger implications across, global issues as well. This is really vitally important.
Absolutely. And I think this is one place where this book is going to be really useful is these are all things that you could implement tomorrow. You don't need special training. You don't need special equipment. These are things you can do. They're part of and most likely you might recognize something you're already doing in this book. Or certainly, these are all things that anyone is going to be able to do. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be a good tool for people like you and I who are already making a difference and maybe just want to add to that or branch out a little bit.
Absolutely. Amanda, would you let listeners know how can we get in touch with you if we want to follow up? I'm really grateful. I know not everybody wants to be on social media right now, but would you let listeners know who want to reach out to you the best way to do that?
By all means. So I know you're going to put my email address in the show notes, so that's a great way to find me, and feel free to track me down anytime.
Amanda, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the summer, and I trust that you still have quite a few weeks left of your vacation before you have to report to work.
You know it. We're going to enjoy every last one of those days.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, my friends in the Midwest here. We're practically neighbors, Amanda.
We're very close by.
Practically neighbors. Thank you so much, and I wish you the very best. And I look forward to hearing from you, when you finish your doctorate or, I don't know, write another book.
Thank you, Amy.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. I hope you take a look at the link to Junior Library Guild in our show notes. Use the code UNITED15 to receive 15 free books with your first shipment. I am currently juggling multiple outlines and tentative recording dates this summer. You can be sure our upcoming episode will showcase amazing school librarians sharing their strategies and resources. I hope you will tune in.